Hi, I'm Pastor David with Declaration Church. And in today's society here in the West, there are a lot of times two ways that people within the church and churches in general tend to look at emotions. One is they tend to really focus in on emotion and how people are feeling and wanting to engage people's emotions to draw them in and really make them feel something. Because when we have an emotional connection with someone or something, that really means a lot to us, and it's difficult to really break that off. That's why so many times it's difficult to end relationships, even when we know they're not healthy, because it's just so hard to break that emotional connection. And so there are a lot of churches today that really try to make that connection with people so that that connection with the church is difficult to break. So I totally understand that. The other side of the coin that we often see are the churches who are almost completely anti-emotion. Like emotions are evil, they are the result of our rebellion in the garden, and they should totally be ignored, and they really are just a major issue that we need to avoid, that we should never, ever, ever trust our emotions. And like most things, in my own experience, in my own life, I think the truth is probably somewhere between the two. It's not so much that emotions are evil, because God created us with emotion. That's a part of who we are as humankind, and it's a part of who we are created in God's image. Emotions are not evil things that should never be heeded or paid attention to. We should definitely heed them, but they shouldn't be the single guiding force of our lives either. Everything needs to be maintained in some kind of a balance and taken into account. God can speak to us through our emotions in the same way that he can speak to us through our minds, through our spirits, through his word, through our relationships with other people. And so when we are saved, when we come to Jesus, when he redeems us, our emotions are also redeemed, and that's a part of the process. So they're not something that God cannot use and we should just throw out. They're another avenue for God to speak to us. And there's a verse in Psalm 84 that I want to bring your attention to today that really brought this to light for me. Psalm 84, verse 5. It says, "Blessed are those whose strength is in you." Speaking of God, speaking of Yahweh, the one true living God, the creator of all things. "Blessed are those whose strength is in you, in whose heart are the ways to Zion." Now, what really struck me is that second phrase, "in whose heart are the ways to Zion." So those people are the ones who find their strength in Yahweh. The people whose hearts within them is the path to Zion. Now, Zion in the Old Testament, the First Testament, whichever term you like to use, that's the dwelling place of God. That is the mountain of God. That's where God is found. It really idealizes and symbolizes that. And so the ways to God, for those who find their strength in him, the paths to God dwell within the heart, meaning that it's a part of our guiding process to lead us to God. Our emotions help to lead us to God. But at the same time, those emotions need to be weighed in light of the fact that our heart, our intention, our desire, our deepest longing is to get to God. When our longings and our emotions are not directed towards God, when they're not lined up with our pursuit of him, they're lined up with our pursuit of something or someone else, those emotions are not going to lead us to Jesus. They're not going to lead us to God. They're not going to lead us closer to him. They're not going to strengthen our relationship with him. But if our hearts are aligned with God and they are seeking after him, they are a path that will lead to him. They are a way that God can direct us and lead us, along with all of the other things that he can use. We want to make sure that we balance everything out with God's truth, even our emotions. So when we feel like God may be leading us emotionally in one way or another, we need to balance that out with God's truth. For instance, let's say I've been married for 21 years, almost 21 years. We got married in 1998. And if at any point my emotions start leading me away from my wife, that is not a direction that God wants me to go. God has already said that marriage is a lifetime commitment, and the only thing that should separate a man and a woman in marriage is death. And so that's not God that's leading me away. That is my emotions focused in on something or someone other than God. But as my emotions draw me to Him, they will also align with His will for my life, and they will start to be a tool in His hands to lead me closer to Him and where He wants me to be, closer to my purpose, closer to my identity in Him. So I hope that helps you today, that our emotions are not necessarily a bad thing, but they are things that we need to take into account as we seek God and try to learn His will for us. If this video has helped you, or this series of videos is helping you, I invite you to share it with someone that you know or think might benefit from them. Go ahead and share the channel, subscribe, and hopefully we'll continue to bring you some information and some things that are helpful to you as you walk and pursue God. As always, I'm Pastor David, and I'm out.